In the world of NASCAR, much of the talk over the past couple of years has been on the quality of the broadcasts, and of course, Fox Sports has to come up in it, seeing how this is currently NASCAR's longest tenured TV partner that still is active. And you see, Fox Sports used to be known as one of the best, the gold standard even in a lot of respects, at NASCAR coverage. But over the past decade or so, there's been a gradual but quickening fall in production value with Fox Sports. And I think a lot of it came to a head in the 2022 Daytona 500. Now, we'll preface this right now that I was at that race, so I did not watch the broadcast live when it happened with everybody else. But from the bits I did see and what I've seen of Fox Sports in the last couple years especially, I completely understand the anger and frustration that a lot of fans are feeling, especially since the 2022 Daytona 500 will probably be the best production that Fox Sports has for NASCAR all year, maybe outside of the Clash, which didn't inspire either. It was probably mediocre at best. So today I want to go back and kind of see where Fox went wrong and maybe what solutions there could be for them. Now, we got to start off with the first TV contract that they signed, all the way back in 2001 through 2006. This was the golden era of Fox Sports and NASCAR for most fans. You see, I think that this was because of a couple different reasons. Number one, they had a consistent team for the entire 6-year run of that contract. There were little to no shuffling pieces from year to year. In the booth, you had Mike Joy, Larry Mack, and Darrell Waltrip. They brought a new energy to the sport. Listen, I know a lot of people are nostalgic for old TBS and CBS broadcasts, as well as ESPN and ABC, but when you look at the energy that Fox Sports brought, especially in the booth, you can see NASCAR being brought up to what the modern era of sports broadcasting was for about the last 20 years. So in this respect, it was something completely new that NASCAR fans had never seen in their sport before. Now, in the pits, you had a consistent team throughout of Steve Burns, Matt Yoakum, Dick Berggren, and Jeannie Zalasko. And on the Hollywood Hotel side of it, you had Chris Myers and Jeff Hammond. All of these different people offered something different to the broadcast, and all of them had personality. So whether it was going off into the pits with Burns or going to the Hollywood Hotel halfway through the race, you always knew there was a fresh perspective that was being brought. It made NASCAR viewership an event on TV every week. The graphics, the production, and the advertising made it the gold standard as well. Listen, before that, NASCAR did not have great graphics on TV. Sports broadcasting in general didn't. And while the graphics of the 2001 to 2006 era of Fox Sports were very clunky by today's standards, at the time, they were breathtakingly brand new. Now, I've said enough about the energy and different things about Fox Sports, but you got to look at who they were compared to as well. Fox Sports did get some stuff wrong, and they did get very goofy at times during that initial run. I hope fans remember that. It's not like Fox Sports was serious and then became this clown show that it is today. It was the same way back then, but much more focused. And when you look at it compared to NBC, while there were many similarities, the difference was the network was showing A+ production and effort. Whereas NBC, you could see the effort really was waning in the last 2 to 3 years. Now, you go from 2007 to 2014 after this. This would be the second of the currently 3 stints that Fox Sports has had in a row with the contracts. The team mostly stayed the same. The booth was exactly the same the entire time, which in the industry of broadcasting is very rare. You rarely see this in sports broadcasting. So Fox Sports was very blessed to have great talent and energy throughout its first 14-year run. In the pits, well, there weren't many changes. Jeannie Zalasko was out for Krista Voda, but Voda was a very good and personable talent on pit road, and she fit into the Fox Sports role like a glove. And then, of course, Dick Berggren retired in 2012, but that was a natural progression. Still, at this point, they really were viewed as the gold standard of NASCAR coverage. Not much had went down in production value, if any at all, into the 2007, 2008, 2009 recession. The chemistry was tight. You could tell all of these people loved working together, and anytime they added someone or someone went away, you could tell it was a big deal for the entire ensemble. Now, this also is where a couple of the cracks did start to show. They started going to more of the cartoony route that they had really succeeded at in the 2001 to 2006 deal, namely with the Digger Cam, where they made a giant CG gopher TV show and pre-race shows and kind of just made it cartoony for kids. And also, the DW-isms started to show a lot. Also, you had the Speed Channel with more NASCAR coverage than ever, until about the end of this deal in 2013, where they replaced it with Fox Sports 1. But when you compare Fox Sports to what it was up against with other broadcasters of NASCAR, it was still far and away the best for the most part. It was way better than TNT, who had a 6-race stint that really could never get any grounded consistency in it, and then it was better than ESPN for the first couple years, and that really leads us to the current stint, 2015 to the present day of 2022 as of this video being made. The team is now consistently changing. I think that's the biggest thing you can notice about this era of Fox's coverage. Chris Devoto left for NBC, while Jamie Little from ESPN was her replacement. A very talented replacement, but someone who fit more the ESPN mold rather than the Fox Sports mold that they had built. Coming with her was Vince Welch, who had come in to be a pit reporter as well. Unfortunately, another change was Steve Byrne's unfortunate passing in 2015. And then you also have to look at the phasing out of Jeff Hammond that had come to completion by the time this contract had started. In place of Hammond was Michael Waltrip, who kept the goofiness up a ton as well. And then you got Larry McReynolds, who was demoted out of the booth for Jeff Gordon in 2016. Giving a little bit less chemistry. Who are we kidding? There was not much chemistry between Gordon and DW. The two were from completely different eras, disagreed a lot in the booth, and a lot of times both drivers seemed to just be kind of out of it compared to Mike Joy, who throughout this entire era has been a great professional and really carried the broadcast on his back. You see, Darrell Waltrip had been losing his edge a little bit. He'd been getting goofier, but he could still offer good insight. But in the last 2 to 3 years of him being on the Fox Sports broadcast, it was very clear that DW's prime had been long gone as a broadcaster. So with his retirement, you had another change in the booth, which for so long had been consistent. You have a two-man booth for a little bit with Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon, before Clint Boyer jumps on, while the next year, this current year, Gordon retires, leaving two consistent broadcasters with a rotating third man or woman in the role. Suffice to say that the consistency that Fox Sports really depended on was gone. What made it worse is that Fox Sports 1 had taken over a lot of coverage in this deal compared to the way that it was basically just used towards the end as an all-star race and Daytona dual provider of broadcasting. FS1 was now broadcasting points races, and the quality of those broadcasts were much lower than those on the network Fox. And when you look at the comparison that you have of Fox Sports at the time, well, NBC had continued to evolve. NBC had learned from their previous stint and the rocky start to their second one they're currently in, and since then have really adapted their broadcast to be much more modern, fresh, and kind of almost feel like the way the Fox Sports ones did in the original 2 stints that they had of TV contracts. In general, NBC's talent, production, and effort in the sport has been higher than Fox's has. Now, I think these are some reasons when you look at the general trend that Fox has gone in for why fans dislike it, but I think a big one is the modern audience itself. You watching and listening right now, myself speaking, and millions of others on TV are all changing in how we view different entertainment nowadays. See, Fox Sports' fall from great coverage really coincided with 2 major issues, or 2 major changes in broadcasting. Number 1 was the rise of digital streaming, and number 2 is the rise of the social media era. The rise of the social media era started in around 2011 or 2012 and really came to fruition through 2016 and 17 when it became mainstream. The thing about this is that Fox Sports at the time was just getting done negotiating a new TV contract, which was based off of the old school way of different information getting across. So when streaming became the dominant form of viewership that it has in the last 2 to 3 years, well, of course Fox Sports and NASCAR are going to be left behind in this. Audiences now have more forms and more avenues of entertainment than ever. And much of it is commercial free because they are the ones paying for the entertainment to be propped up. And when you have Fox Sports, who has more commercials than ever, they're completely behind with the times. They're not 20 years behind, but they're easily 10 to 12 years behind where sports broadcasting in general should be going. But you see, Fox Sports, I don't think actually is as much different from the way it was before as people think. Obviously without it evolving much, but the thing is, their formula worked with NASCAR. But the thing is, the same strategy over the last 21 years can't work when the level of the people coming on the broadcast, especially in the lower series, are a lot lower than what we had before. There's a reason that we had very consistent broadcasters during the first 2 contracts with Fox. Now, you have lesser talent in production and in the booth. You have people who are shuffling around the industry while Fox is really trying to push most of their really good content towards NFL broadcasting especially. And then of course you have lack of innovation. Fox Sports right now has looked to kind of been going backwards in how it covers the sport. It seems lazier from a viewer's perspective. And really, that's gonna show both with fans that watch, of course, because they're gonna notice every week, but also with people coming on. Overall, I think that it's been a slow grind, and with lack of innovation has really been magnified in the new era of broadcasting. But now I want to pass this all on to you. What do you think of Fox Sports' run in NASCAR in the last 21 years? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video. Share this video and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. And to all my channel members at home who have gone above and beyond, thank you so much for your support. So until next time, have a good one.